We're going to go insider baseball here on today's Locked On Vols. No, not baseball. We're going to talk football, go behind the scenes, some practice observations, some notes you're not going to get anywhere else, Tennessee football talk, and much more on today's Locked On Vols.
You are Locked On Vols, your daily podcast on the Tennessee Volunteers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, good Wednesday morning, everybody. Welcome to Locked On Vols. I'm your host, Eric Kane. Appreciate you guys for being here, making Locked On Vols your first listen each and every day. We're a part of Locked On Podcast Network, where it is your team every single day. Shout out every dayers for making this show what it is. We got a fun one today. We're going to go behind the scenes, give you some exclusive notes from Tennessee's spring practice on Tuesday morning. That's coming up in a matter of seconds. Tobe Awaka enters the transfer portal, and I see now on my screen on YouTube that I have a typo. It says Tobe Awaka. That's great. I'll have to fix that at the break. But Tobe Awaka enters the transfer portal. What does this mean for the University of Tennessee moving forward? That's coming up here in segment 2. And then we'll catch up with Josh Ward for a little Ward Wednesday action in segment number 3. All right, that's better. I fixed the background there. It says Tobe Awaka. Now we can actually move on. We'll talk more about him in segment number 2. So Tennessee spring football practice number 11 that came on Tuesday morning was out there for, the normal 20 minutes or so. And I thought Nico, when I was out there and talking with some of my colleagues, I thought Nico threw the ball better than he had all spring. And that does not mean that Nico was not throwing the ball well. He's had a really sharp spring, but he was on point Tuesday morning. I mean, I didn't see one of his balls hit the ground. Well, granted, we weren't out there very long, but he was really, really good. And so that was kind of something noteworthy for me. I thought Chris Brazzell made a couple of plays when we were out there as he continues to feel more comfortable in the scheme and the system and become more integrated into the offense. And that's been, pointed out here the last couple of weeks. So I saw that connection with those two. And Chris Brazzell was getting some praise from Kelsey Pope, wide receivers coach. I thought that was noteworthy. Overall, when we were out there, they were in shells, okay, so there was no tackling to the ground. I thought it was more, they were still getting after it, but I thought it was more teaching. I thought it was more fundamentals, that type of work there on a Tuesday morning. Linebackers were doing run reads. Defensive backs were kind of walking through some pass drops, coming back and doing another, zone pass drop and kind of, walking or maybe jogging half speed to collision the route and kind of carry it out, that type of stuff. A lot of teaching, a lot of instruction. And that's kind of what I saw Tuesday morning, but they were still getting after it a little bit. Remember, they were out there Tuesday morning. They'll be back out there Thursday morning. They'll walk through on Friday, and then the orange and white spring game is coming up, this Saturday. Had a buddy, a source will say, that was allowed to stay and watch all of spring practice for Tennessee on Tuesday, and I caught up with him afterwards and took some notes on some things that stood out to him, and I want to share those with you. He was there to watch Nico. Wanted to watch Nico. Who don't want to watch Nico, right? I want to watch Nico. You want to watch Nico. He said, man, he made a couple of really nice throws. His ability to throw on the run, and this is unprompted because you know that I talk about this all the time. He said Nico's ability to throw on the run and extend plays is really, really impressive. That's probably my biggest takeaway from Nico on Tuesday. And I'm like, man, I've been pounding the table about how that's going to be so different compared to what Tennessee was with Joe Milton last year. Not that he's a Michael Vick tuck it and run type guy. He's just a guy that can extend plays. And he said, man, that jumped off the page to me on Tuesday. So it sounds like Nico had a really, really good day. He had a nice deep shot that's actually on social media. Tennessee football tweeted it out. He had a nice deep shot over the middle to Dont'e Thornton in 7-on-7. He did a handful of plays in team and 11-on-11, but overall, a lot of the work was for Gaston Moore and Jake Merklinger today. And that's common. Again, Nico's not a veteran, but Nico's a guy that you don't want to take any unnecessary risk with towards the end of spring practice, right? So a lot of work for Gaston Moore, a lot of work for Jake Merklinger behind Nico with team and 11-on-11. With the first group, I should mention. So that was a couple of notes on Nico. He also said Nico had a nice touchdown pass over the middle. He didn't catch who the receiver was. but he was really impressed with him and his ability to throw on the run. He said that they did some red zone passing, and we get to see a little bit of that, but kind of to end, and they probably had a defense out there, or a scout team at least, but to end practice they were doing some work in the red zone. Excuse me. And he said that Chris Brazzell went up and climbed the ladder and made a really, really nice catch in the back corner of the end zone. Again, we've heard so much talk about Dont'e Thornton, so much talk about Mike Matthews, a lot of Braylon Staley talk early on, who was not at practice on Tuesday, at least when we were out there. But Chris Brazzell's really picked up steam here in the back half of spring practice, and apparently he made a really, really nice catch in teamwork in the corner of the end zone. Jake Merklinger, who was working with the twos, he threw a touchdown to one of the tight ends. My source didn't know which tight end it was, but it doesn't believe it was one of the top two of Ethan Davis or Holden Stays. So that was noteworthy. Merklinger also threw an interception in 7-on-7, and that happens. You can only do one thing. You're not running the football in 7-on-7, so interceptions in practice happen. He said that Boo Carter really stood out to him. Boo Carter's physicality. Boo Carter going up and challenging some of the top flight wide receivers on this team. And that comes as no shock to me because I've watched Boo Carter play high school football for 4 years. And yes, I understand this is a different ballgame. I get it. But I knew that dude was going to translate just fine to the SEC because he was an absolute stud. I've seen him play, seen his physicality, seen what he can do with the ball in his hands, and see what he can do playing defense at the safety position. He's at a really sharp spring, and I'm not saying he's going to come in and be a starter and play 60 plays in week 1 or 2 for Tennessee, but I do think that he can be a guy that kind of mixes in, a guy that gives especially Jordan Thomas a break or subs in whenever he's banged up or whatever. But Boo Carter stood out to my source on Tuesday, and so I thought that was good. Plus, he was taking some drills, with the football in his hand, practicing, simulating, running, returning. I think that he's going to be Tennessee's punt returner and kick returner next year for sure. So Boo Carter had a good day on Tuesday. A couple other notes. Mike Matthews had a nice catch and run during the team portion. Let's see here. Just overall, not a whole lot of lineman notes, not a whole lot of defensive notes, but a lot of Nico and wide receiver notes. And it sounded like those guys had a really, really sharp practice on Tuesday. Overall, I think this has been a really good spring for Tennessee. And it's kind of like my reports here on Locked On Vols have been just a little bit here, a little bit here. I mean, it's hard to get information when you're not there, right? And when you don't have a lot of people who are watching practice. But it sounds like it's been a really, really sharp spring. Wide receivers good. Nico good. Secondary, pleasant surprise. Got to go prove it. Offensive line, very much a work in progress because so many guys have been out, and it's been baptism by fire for some of these guys, these young guys. Defensive line, great unit. Jason Jenkins was asked to the media on Tuesday about the defensive line. He said, we stacked. Yeah, they're stacked. Linebackers, feels like it's been a pleasant surprise despite Arian Carter and Elijah Herring both missing spring for the most part. Sounds like Jeremiah Teelander's really come along, and Keenan Peely's had a really, really good spring. So wanted to pass along some of those notes, a little behind closed doors, if you will. Tennessee, again, wrapping up spring practice this week. Tennessee will be back on the practice field on Thursday morning and then getting set for the orange and white game that's coming up on Saturday morning from Neyland Stadium. Hey, when we come back, we'll talk about a big move for the basketball roster. Tobe Awaka enters the transfer portal. I'll give you my thoughts on that and more coming up next as we continue on with Locked On Vols. It is playoff time in the NBA and the NHL. Baseball is in full swing, and FanDuel is your place to bet on every single game. Right now, new customers can get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $150 win or lose. Bet on everything from slap shots to home runs to slam dunks, all on an app that is safe, secure, and super easy to use. What are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to make your first bet an automatic win. Again, $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $150 win or lose at FanDuel.com/lockedon. FanDuel.com/lockedon to make your first bet an automatic win. FanDuel, it's America's #1 sports book. So big news on Tuesday in regards to Tennessee basketball is forward Tobe Awaka, sophomore, has entered the transfer portal. He went on Instagram and described his decision, how difficult it was. Quote, "The past 2 years have been some of the most influential of my life. The relationships gained and the experiences I've had will live on forever. They're life-changing. I want to start by thanking Coach Barnes, all of his assistants, and the rest of the basketball staff for welcoming me with open arms and supporting me during my time on Rocky Top. I also want to thank my teammates, my brothers for life. It was a pleasure getting to know and to go to war with you all these past 2 years. Last but not least, thank you, Vol Nation, for being one of the best fan bases in the country. Your hospitality and support has truly been a blessing. The decision was extremely difficult to make. However, I have decided to enter my name in the transfer portal. Thank you, Vol Nation. I will always love Tennessee." It stings a little bit, right? I mean, Tobe Awaka was obviously a fan favorite. His crazy eyes that he gave Kentucky in that basketball game earlier this year was awesome. The ability for him to come off the bench and play 30 seconds and rack up 2 fouls was annoying, was frustrating, but it was comical. He was an energy guy. He was a blue-collar guy. I'm saying was. I mean, he's gone from Tennessee's program. He is a guy that really brought a lot off the bench. And he was huge if you go back and remember that, was it the Creighton game? No, it was Texas in the second round when he had 8 or 10 first half points when Tennessee just couldn't find the bottom of the net. He was huge, but he was a big body guy that at points in time played a huge role for Tennessee. Whenever Josiah would sit and they'd go 2 bigs or whatever the case may be. You don't want to lose a guy like that. You don't. And it's of my opinion, and I haven't heard anything, so this is just me talking. It's of my opinion that it's a move like this that's going to drive Rick Barnes into retirement. It's a move like this why Coach K is not coaching anymore. Why, some of these other guys, Roy Williams is not coaching anymore. Some of these older coaches in the last couple of years who have said, you know what, I'm good. Had a good run. I'm done. So on and so forth. It's because to be as good as you can be as a program, sure, you want to go and utilize the transfer portal. And Tennessee dang sure did that this past year with Dalton Connect, and it worked out well. And he, was one of the 2 best players in the country. So it was good. But you want to develop chemistry and a culture and have guys that know the expectations of your program, but also know the expectations of your coach and this league. Who am I describing right now, guys? I'm describing Josiah Jordan-James and Santiago Vescovi, Zakiya Ziegler, Jonas Adu, guys who have been in the system for years and years and years and who become better players and just know the rigors of this league and know what to expect and all that. Think about Tennessee's best teams in program history overall. This past year's team, the Grant and Admiral teams. You had Grant, you had Admiral, you had Bowden, you had Kyle Alexander, you had Lamonte. You had a lot of old guys that had skill, but also knew what to expect and all that. So these are the type of moves, in my opinion, that will drive an older coach just insane. Because it's like, do you really want to leave? Why are you leaving? Are you that impatient? Are you that impatient to not be satisfied with, let's look up how many minutes per game he had. I would imagine probably 13 or 14 minutes per game. 13.1 minutes per game. Are you not satisfied with that? Do you think that you deserve starter minutes of 25 to 26 minutes? My rebuttal to that for Tobe Awaka is I would love for him to grow into that, but right now he's not ready. He can't stay on the court. He fouls too much. He's not ready to be given starter minutes. So are you impatient to wait and try to grind that out? Or are you chasing a name, image, and likeness package? Probably a little bit of both, to be completely honest. And I'm not saying this is the case for Tobe. I don't know. But for so many different cases around the country, it's more of the latter. It's you're chasing the money. And those are the type of things that are going to take good coaches out of this league. Those are the type of things, those are the reasons you're losing head coaches in the college game. They're going to the NFL. They're taking coordinator positions. You're seeing a lot of crazy stuff. Elliott from Georgia State to going back to South Carolina as a position coach. Chip Kelly going from a head coach to a coordinator spot. The Boston College coach going to the Green Bay Packers. it's taking good coaches out of this league. So it's got to be frustrating. Got to be frustrating for Rick Barnes. Having said all that, I don't think this is a complete shock. Didn't necessarily expect Tobe Awaka to enter the transfer portal, but his name was kind of one of those that you need to watch out for, need to be on alert for. He could potentially be going to chasing starter minutes and a bigger role and all that. So, we'll see what happens. I wish the best for him. Hate that he's going because I like Tobe Awaka a lot. He averaged 5.1 points per game, 4.6 rebounds per game, a little over half a block per game, and 13 minutes a game this season. 35 games, his second year with Tennessee. As a freshman, he averaged 3.2 points per game, 3.8 rebounds per game, and just over 10 minutes a game. He's a former three-star prospect, not a highly touted prospect. Tennessee found him in Brooklyn, like where they found Zakai Ziegler. Cardinals Hayes High School, the same New York Lightning AAU program that produced Zakai Ziegler, a New York native. What does Tennessee have in the cupboard now? Well, of course, you lose Dalton Connect, Josiah Jordan-James, Santiago Vescovi. You've now lost Freddie DeLeon in the transfer portal, DJ Jefferson in the transfer portal, which neither one of those guys are surprises. And then the first, again, not shocking surprise, but the first big name was Tobe Awaka. You now have 5 slots available if you're 13. Tennessee's going to have to go to the transfer portal. You only have one player coming in, and that's Bishop Boswell, an incoming freshman guard. Excuse me. But you look at the big guys on your team now. You bring back Jonas Adu. Again, this is assuming these guys are coming back. You bring back Jonas Adu. He's a junior. You bring back J.P. Estrella, who had 15 minutes against Purdue. His numbers are not that impressive, but he got more and more run, appeared in 25 games. He's your second big man now. You got Kate Phillips, who appeared in 13 games this year as a freshman. Didn't see a whole lot of action, but they do like him. He's your third big man. You need to go and get another big man. Another big man for sure out of the transfer portal. I think it's a given now that you have to go and get a forward, a frontline player in the transfer portal. Now, that doesn't mean you're going to play 2 bigs. Tobe Awaka probably looked at it and said, all right, Jonas is back. Barnes loves him. Okay. Barnes loves playing the small ball with the stretch 4. So could that be Jemiah Mashack next year playing the 4? I don't know. It's probably not going to be 2 bigs. So he saw that. Then he probably saw J.P. Estrella come on and play 15 minutes against Purdue and look good. And so a lot of those could be contributing factors to Tobe Awaka wanting to go to the transfer portal. I don't like this move. I don't. I like Tobe. I think you did as well. I loved his energy. I love what he brought to the court when he was there. But Tobe Awaka enters the transfer portal. Third player for Tennessee to enter the transfer portal. And now they have got to go to the transfer portal and bring in a front court player. I think it's a given now. Hey, when we come back, we'll check in with Josh Ward for a little Ward Wednesday. All that and more, that's coming up next as we continue on Wednesday, Locked On Vols. Stay tuned. That is not going to have you misremember anything. It's going to take care of you and really be an aid there for you when you're trying to go to events in your area, not just sporting events, but theater, concerts, all that and more. That is the Game Time app. And when you go in and put in the promo code Locked On College, LOCKEDONCOLLEG, Locked On College, you're going to get $20 off your first purchase. What I love about love about the Game Time app is they have the best price guarantee. Sometimes when I want to go to a game or a concert or whatever's in my area, at the Bijou, at the Tennessee Theater, at Thompson Bowling, at Food City, I like to go on other apps and see other websites and see if I can find a ticket that is cheaper. I can never find a ticket that's cheaper. Plus, if I did, Game Time has the best price guarantee that they're going to match it or give you 110% of the credit. All that and more. Last minute tickets, flash deals, zone deals. Easy to find MLB tickets now that Major League Baseball season for every kind of event in your area. Views from your seat so you know exactly what you are paying for. Plus, as I mentioned, the lowest price guarantee. They have event cancellation protection and job loss protection as well. So again, take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the promo code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Create that account, redeem code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. More to come with Ward Wednesday coming up next as we continue on with Locked On Vols. Hey, Josh, newsworthy week. It's the first week of the offseason for Tennessee basketball, but as you said on Josh and Swain, Wednesday or Tuesday afternoon, like that's when things get really heated up a little bit. We got some moves in the transfer portal, got a Lady Vols basketball hire, got spring football, Orange and White game coming up this weekend. Let's start with the news from Tuesday. Tobe Awaka enters the transfer portal. It's one of those that you didn't necessarily expect, but honestly, in this day and era in college basketball and college athletics, it's not shocking. It's a loss for Tennessee, and one that you probably didn't want to lose, but overall, Tobe Awaka is going to the transfer portal.
Yeah, Waka's move to the transfer portal would be unexpected because he fits in with Tennessee's style, hard nose, play good defense, work. He came in and worked over the last 2 seasons.
No.
He was a fan favorite. Fans loved the way that he played, could see what kind of player he can become into the future. He was a guy that was kind of found by Tennessee. He was not a big-time prospect on the radar. Tennessee goes to New York, where they had gone to get Zakai Ziegler, and they get Awaka. But we can't be surprised, really, by just about anybody. There are some exceptions. I would be stunned if Zakai Ziegler enters the transfer portal, for example. But just about anybody could hop into the portal and look elsewhere, and it wouldn't be very surprising. I think a big part of it in the immediate reaction from Tennessee fans was they love him. They love the way that he plays, how hard he works on the court every single minute that he's out there. So that made it a little bit more stunning. But you have to anticipate it. I think Tennessee knew that it could be a possibility and was probably already planning for the chance that it might have to replace Tobe Awaka with the front court rotation.
Yeah, so what does that mean, Josh? I know you don't have all the answers here, but I would assume going to look for another body in the transfer portal for the front court. You got, obviously, Jonas Adu. We know the good season he had. Not a good finish, but a great season. We know about J.P. Estrella, who came in and played 15 minutes against Purdue. Kate Phillips, they're high on. But it does feel like they need another body, and you don't have an incoming body coming in for this year's class. Would think that they're going to look to the transfer portal to replenish. Now 5 spots are open.
Yes, Tennessee should look for another big man. I thought they should be looking for another big man before the Tobe Awaka news. And Adu is a player to not forget. By the way, there are assumptions in this conversation. We are assuming Adu comes back to Tennessee. That's a fairly safe one right now. But This is for the sake of conversation. Adu comes back as an all-SEC player. I know the Purdue game was bad, and I know there were games along the way this season where he needed to be better, especially against opposing teams with really good big men. So that I recognize. But he was an all-SEC player. There are worse places to be starting out when you're trying to build out your front court. J.P. Estrella showed in that Purdue game, hey, there's something to build on, as his talent, I think, is pretty obvious, but he needs to get stronger this offseason, needs to be ready for those big guys, because he held his own. It's not like he was successful against Zach Edey in Purdue, as few were. But that's a pretty good starting out point. Even if you take Tobe Awaka out of the conversation, we'll see what happens with Cade Phillips and his development. But that's too much unknown for me, Eric, to say, okay, Tennessee's good there in the front court. They need to go get another big man, somebody that's played elsewhere that can come in and help right away.
Yeah, and it's heard you say with Jason Swain on your show Tuesday afternoon, it's like everybody's got questions across the country right now. But
everybody,
when you sit here and think about it, you had a big 3 this year. 2/3 of that big 3, unless something shocking happens, it's going to return for you. It's a pretty good starting point for your roster. So we'll see how kind of they finalize that over the next couple of weeks. Lady Vols made a hire this week. Kim Caldwell, what do you like? What do you dislike? What are your thoughts on the hiring of Kim Caldwell to coach Lady Vols?
Well, the style that she coaches, I think, will be exciting to fans. That was a point that Danny White, I think, stressed. Hey, if you like the style of Josh Heupel and Tennessee football, you'll like the style from Lady Vols basketball. So that's something that I think will be enticing to fans right away to check out what's going on. It's about the roster and the talent she's able to bring in. There is work to be done with the roster, having to replace Rickea Jackson. There was already work that needed to be done. Let's say Rickea Jackson's coming back. Tennessee still has work to do to be where it wants to be to compete with the best teams in the country. And 2 of those teams are in the SEC, in South Carolina, which just won the title, and LSU, which won it a year ago. So there's work to be done, which leads to questions about, okay, what will the staff look like, and the resources, NIL, everything that comes together to get players as quickly as possible, because the expectations of competing with the best teams in the SEC and then around the country will come rather quickly. Maybe not year one, but by year two, people will be saying, okay, are we ready to compete with those teams? Because that's what is expected out of Lady Vols basketball. Kim Caldwell acknowledged that and knows that stepping into the Tennessee job, it's a big deal. It's a big job. It's a huge step up from anywhere she's been. Marshall's the biggest school she's been at. She was there for a year, but she was also really successful, and her record is tremendous. So that combined with Danny White's track record of finding coaches that can be successful, Josh Heupel at Tennessee, UCF too, that has to help with the confidence that Tennessee fans will have. So there has to be a wait and see, got to go prove it approach to this, but there are also several reasons to point to be excited for Tennessee fans.
Yeah, I mean, anytime you make a hire, and regardless of what sport or whatever, I mean, it's a risk. But low hanging fruit here. I mean, we've talked about this. It's been Locked On Lady Vols last couple episodes here, and it's been fun, kind of going over this hire and everything. But I mean, low hanging fruit here. She's coached 1 year of Division I basketball, and now she's coaching on the court of a woman that made women's basketball what it is. I mean, it's a lot of pressure for a girl that's for a woman, that is not very experienced, but still a lot to be excited about.
Well, a crazy thing is to think about the expectations, because look at the men's program. If Tennessee goes to a Sweet 16 year in, year out, we're talking about that being a successful season. There can be some disappointment, but we'll look at it and say, hey, that's a really good run. That's what gets you fired as the Lady Vols basketball coach. So in the next few years, it won't be about, hey, can you get to the Sweet 16 or even the Elite Eight? It's going to be about, can you get to the Final Four, and can you compete for national titles and SEC titles? I think that will be a part of the conversation, because it just hasn't happened in a few years. Tennessee has not been to a Final Four in 16 years, which is crazy when you know the history and success under Coach Pat Summitt. But that's going to be the expectation, no matter how long it's been, get to a Final Four. So, Eric, if we're talking about the Lady Vols in 3 or 4 years and they haven't been to the Final Four, fans are going to be asking, what's up, no matter what else they will have done.
Tennessee basketball finishing off spring practice this week. Had a practice on Tuesday. We'll practice again on Thursday. A walkthrough on Friday, and then the orange and white game on Saturday. A limited number of fans will be allowed inside Neyland Stadium, but what are some things you're going to be looking forward to seeing out there at Neyland Stadium?
Well, probably looking on the outside. I mean, quarterback play and all that, and who's available. I don't start with line of scrimmage play, because I need to see starters out there before I can really say I'm excited about the battle up front. We can pick out individual players, but at wide receiver and at corner, assuming enough of those guys are out, because they're deeper in terms of bodies and new players that are trying to earn playing time, I'll be eager to see what those guys are able to do, because I think they're more athletic, they're more talented than we saw a year ago in the secondary and at wide receiver, but they're still really unproven, especially in the defensive backfield. So I would start there. There are a number of individual players that we can go through at each position group. So there's a lot for fans to still be interested in, while also offering caution that this is not the whole team. They are careful. It's the biggest practice was probably last Thursday with the second scrimmage. That's probably a bigger deal than the orange and white game in terms of what they're able to get done with football. But the guys that you see out there wearing pads, you can still see what they're capable of physically, and that will give you an idea. Like Nico last year didn't do a lot in the spring game, but rolling out on the right side of the field, throwing across to Ethan Davis, that one throw showed Tennessee fans what they had heard about with Nico and his physical ability. So he wasn't running everything within the offense, but he showed off what he was capable of, and there will be a few players that are able to do that on Saturday. Yeah,
and spring game MVP Gaston Moore is going to get a whole lot of run, I can promise you that, because Nico, he's going to be about 2 of 4, 2 of 5 passing, 3 of 5, 2 series. They're going to call it a day. All right. Mm-hmm. And this is no disrespect to the fans or anything, but coaches don't want to do games like this. They don't want to be on the SEC network at this time of the year. They would much rather have a behind the, closed door scrimmage like they always do. So it's very much going to be bland. It's going to be very vanilla, as it always is. As you pointed out, I mean, there's going to be a lot of veterans that won't even play. It's going to be a get through it day for the most part, and kind of close this book and get back into the offseason.
Yeah, they don't want any more Cameron Seldon situations where you have an injury that's going to be costly long-term, at least as it applies to this year. There's the unknown of when Seldon will be back at running back. That's why this week I have said it in a joking manner somewhat, and Swain has rolled his eyes at me. not joking when I say it's game week for Tennessee. It's orange and white game week for Tennessee. Swain's not having it because he knows how much the reins will be pulled back for Tennessee this week.
Who's going to win? What's the line, and are you taking the Vols on this one?
I do have the Vols plus the points against the Vols. Yeah,
there you go.
Always take the underdog in the spring game.
Always. Josh Ward, co-host of 99.1's The Sports Animal, Josh and Swain with VFL Jason Swain. Josh, what's coming up for the rest of the week on the show, and of course in your Josh and Swain newsletter Friday morning?
Yeah, a lot of football talk. We've had a good amount of basketball. The offseason has been busy so far and will continue to be. So the unexpected we will cover, and we'll catch up on some of the discussion from the week Friday with that newsletter. It's free in your email inbox, joshandswain.com, to subscribe, or that link that Eric gives you. So football, basketball, men and women, plus a big baseball series coming up. So a lot to cover.
Yep, and that link is in the show description of this episode and every episode of Locked On Vols. Josh, appreciate it, man. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Eric.
That is Josh Ward, former host of Locked On Vols, current host of Josh and Swain on 99.1 The Sports Animal, noon to 3, and you can check out his work all the time over on Twitter at Josh_Ward on the X. All right, fun show here today. Appreciate you guys being here. We talked a little Tennessee football, some practice observations, and some behind-the-scenes notes a little bit in segment number 1. Discuss Tobe Awaka, basketball roster reset, all that and more in segment number 2. And, of course, got up with Josh Ward here in segment 3. We'll continue to look at Tennessee football as it ends spring practice, the latest news from the transfer portal, if there's any for Tennessee hoops, all that and more as we get you set for the weekend on Thursday's Locked On Vols. Appreciate you guys for being here, and we'll talk again tomorrow. This is Locked On Vols.